Hey guys, tonight we ease into something surprisingly soft, unusually poetic, and, let's be honest, a little ridiculous. You're a Tudor noble, and before you've spoken a single word, before breakfast has been served or powdered wigs placed on anyone's head, you are thinking about your socks. You slide your legs out from under the heavy wool blanket. It's cold, always is. The stone beneath your bed radiates last night's chill right through your toes. But you're not worried, because near the foot of your bed, folded with the kind of reverence usually reserved for sacred texts, lies your finest pair of hose, hand-stitched pale blue made from imported Italian silk that cost more than a stable of horses. These aren't socks in the modern sense. They're stockings, hose technically. They reach your thigh and cling like second skin. And here's the kicker, you don't just wear them, you celebrate them, you admire them. Sometimes for hours, and you're not alone in this odd behavior. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy, say New Hampshire or maybe Southern California, let me know your location and your local time in the comments below. I love seeing where you all are drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're still sitting on the edge of your four-poster bed, by the way. The chambermaid has brought the foot heater, a little pot of warm coals tucked into a carved oak frame, and placed it right under your toes. She curtsies once, then leaves. This is the moment. You reach forward, slowly unwrap the linen cloth, and there they are. Your socks, you don't pull them on yet, no. That would be hasty. You unfold them, drape them across your lap. The light from the fire hits the silk just right. Every stitch catches gold. You run your fingers down the seam, admiring the perfect evenness. No sag, no wear. These are fresh, just mended last week by a woman whose job, her only job, is sock maintenance. You smile. Because today will be a good day. That's what fine socks mean. In the Tudor world, your hose says everything about you before your mouth even opens. These stockings, tight-fitting, brightly dyed, sometimes scented with herbs or rosewater, signal wealth, fashion sense, even your connection to the court. You wouldn't be caught dead in rough wool unless you were trying to prove something ironic, and heaven forbid anyone thinks your stockings were bought second-hand. That would be social ruin. You begin to pull them on. It's a slow process. Not just because they're delicate, but because there's a technique. You roll the stocking down first, slide your foot in, and unroll it up your leg, smoothing as you go. The goal is perfection. No twisting, no sagging at the ankle. The seam must sit just right down the back of the calf, a line so straight it might be judged like a horse at market. Remember, you'll be judged. When you walk through the Great Hall later, when you sit by the fire with your breeches slightly lifted to show the embroidered cuff of your hose, people will glance, and they will notice. Some will envy, some will whisper. A few, if they're feeling bold, might comment directly, usually with something like, "A fine stitch, my lord," or, "That blue brings out the vein in your temple most elegantly." You chuckle. It's absurd, but it's real. Even now, historians agree that among Tudor nobility, the ritual of sock admiration was a genuine, time-consuming part of daily life. But how much of it was vanity? How much was strategy? And how much was a weird kind of fashion-forward armor? Historians still argue whether this obsession was primarily about warmth, status, or a subtler kind of courtship. After all, when you can't show your chest or thighs in public, the calf becomes scandalously important. The sock, then, becomes a weapon. You finish rolling on the first stocking. It clings tightly, just as it should. You stand briefly to check the stretch, bending your knee slightly, lifting your leg with practiced flourish. No slack, good. Now the second. You go slower this time, admiring the mirror reflection. The silk gleams. There's a small embroidered emblem stitched just above the ankle, a red rose with a gold thread stem, subtle, personal. That was added just last month after you caught the Queen's eye during a particularly graceful bow. You tell yourself it means nothing, but you wear that pair more often now. You rise again, walk to the standing mirror by the window. The light is softer here, early morning, just past dawn. The sky outside is mist and soot, but in the glass your legs look regal, long, straight, structured. You adjust your garters, thin bands of velvet tied just below the knee holding the hose in place. You've chosen cream today, not too bold, not too dull. You tug them tight, then flick the ends so they drape just right. It takes 20 minutes. You don't care. This is part of it. This is the beginning. Sock admiration is not a chore. It is the overture of your performance. You will dress fully soon. Padded doublet, ruffed collar, short velvet breeches, fur-lined overcloak. But it all starts here, with the base layer that no one admits they're staring at, but everyone is. Because in Tudor England, even your ankles have politics. You sit back down on the bed. The fire crackles low. Somewhere down the hall, a lute begins tuning for breakfast. You stretch your legs out in front of you, wiggle your toes. Flex the calves, and take one more long, luxurious look at what you're wearing. You feel ready. And all you've done is put on your socks. Section 2. You walk slowly now, not from stiffness, but strategy. Each step is measured, not rushed. After all, there's no point in wearing the finest hose this side of Calais if no one gets to see them. The hallway stones are cold, but the silk warms quickly against your skin. There's a slight shush as the fabric brushes against the hem of your short breeches. Barely audible, but you notice others will too. In Tudor England, socks, hose, stockings, call them what you will, weren't just about covering your legs. They were currency, social indicators. Threads of power. You enter the great chamber, nodding to a pair of young stewards as you go. They nod back, eyes flicking briefly to your calves. That's right, look all you want, because you've earned this silk. And not everyone has. Sock material in your world is more than taste. It's a declaration. Wool. Acceptable, common, sturdy. Worn by country gentry and servants alike. Durable, yes, but it itches. And let's be honest, it wrinkles like a boiled cabbage leaf by noon. Cotton? Rare, imported, often reserved for linings or lighter garments. It whispers of trade, of merchant blood, of people who buy influence but don't yet wear it comfortably. But silk sings. It glides, it clings, it announces that you have connections in Italy, that you know a merchant whose hands never touch rough fabric. That you can afford not just the initial expense, but the endless care it requires, because silk needs cleaning, coddling, mending, attention, much like a courtier. And then there's colour. Earth tones are for labourers, browns, muddy greens, undyed greys, the palette of invisibility. But you wear blue today, not navy. Not some sombre twilight shade, no, sky blue. The colour of an afternoon wedding veil, bold, slightly audacious. It says, I have nothing to hide and quite a bit to show. And that's only the outer meaning. In Tudor courts, certain colours were legally restricted. Sumptuary laws dictated what each class could and couldn't wear. Blue, especially in certain dyes like indigo or woad, was expensive and tricky to make. Only nobles, or those pretending to be, dared wear it. Historians still debate the full enforcement of those laws. Some claim they were strictly policed, with spies at the tailors. Others suggest they were guidelines easily dodged with a bribe or a favour. But regardless, every shade you wore spoke volumes before your mouth did. So your socks, they're speaking right now, and the room is listening. You cross the chamber slowly, pausing near the window where the morning light catches your ankles just right. You angle your foot slightly, let the garter ribbon peek out from beneath your breeches. A nearby gentleman, Lord Rees, who wore rough maroon hose yesterday that sagged pitifully by dinner, glances down. His lip tightens. You don't gloat. But you don't look away either. You walk to the high table, greet the steward, and take your place on the velvet-cushioned bench. As you sit, you cross your legs with subtle flair. Left over right, just enough angle to let the stocking's embroidered seam catch the eye, that little silver thread running from ankle to mid-thigh. It's not necessary, but it is impressive. It was hand-stitched by a tailor's apprentice with fingers so delicate he once mended a queen's hem without breaking the weave. You waited 3 weeks for that seam, wore it today because you knew the chamber would be full. Sock diplomacy. Your neighbour at table leans close. Spanish? She asks. You nod, modestly. She raises a brow, impressed. Wool-lined? You shake your head. Full silk. A pause. Then a soft whistle through her teeth. You pretend not to enjoy it. In truth, these stockings travelled farther than most of the court ever will. Woven in Valencia, dyed in Naples, shipped in a crate packed with dried lemons, and stored in a London merchant's cellar for 6 months before reaching your tailor's shop. And now, they're hugging your calves like loyal subjects. A fringe letter uncovered in a Norfolk estate mentions Lord Everin, who refused to rise for the Queen's toast until he had properly adjusted the left leg of his hose. He claimed the seam was slightly off, like a dishonest priest. The court laughed, but he was not invited back for weeks. Did his socks ruin him? Possibly. Which is why you check yours again, casually brushing your palm along the back of your thigh beneath the table. Perfect. As you reach for your cup, someone across the table makes a joke. Something about a man who wore patched wool hose to a wedding and was mistaken for the cook. Laughter bubbles. You smile. Because you've never patched your stockings. You've had them patched, of course, but by professionals. Invisible stitching, repairs so delicate they restore the dignity of the garment, not highlight its fallibility. The breakfast arrives, eggs, bread, thick porridge with a splash of cream. You eat slowly, allowing time for glances. You catch a few, a young page with envious eyes. A dowager countess with lips pressed tight. The socks are doing their work, because while breeches may be loosened, unbuttoned, or even removed in drunken fits at feast's end, the socks remain. They linger. They are the last layer, and in many ways the first impression. You dab your mouth with a linen square. Rise slowly, you've got meetings later, a scroll to deliver. A prayer to mumble, but right now your only duty is to let the stockings be seen. You cross the hall again, slightly slower this time. Let the blue catch the light once more. You nod to no one because everyone is watching. Section 3. You don't dress yourself, not fully. That would be beneath your station, and more importantly, it would be terribly inefficient. There's a process, a rhythm, and at the center of it stands your valet, Hugh, quiet as a shadow, always 2 steps behind and 1 thought ahead. He's already in the room when you return from the Great Hall. He's laid out the next layer of your outfit across the broad-backed chair, but he knows better than to rush the socks. He sees it in your eyes. You're not done admiring. And who could blame you? You sit in the tall, mirror-backed chair by the hearth. The light is stronger now. It falls across your knees and ankles in long, golden bands. You extend one leg slowly, then the other. Flex the calf just enough. Hugh says nothing, but he brings a brush. Not for your shoes, for your socks. You lift your foot and rest it on the small wooden stand. He brushes slowly, carefully, working from ankle to knee, removing the fine layer of dust and fireplace ash that clings to everything in a Tudor manner. The bristles are boar hair, stiff but gentle. He follows with a soft cloth, buffing the silk to a smooth, dull gleam. He does the other leg, stands back, then, as always, the ritual. He kneels, takes your right garter in hand, adjusts the knot, tightens it by 1/4 turn, fluffs the trailing ribbon just slightly so it falls at a pleasing diagonal, does the same on the left. Then he stands, steps aside, and waits for your approval. You nod, barely. And he nods back, content. This is the servant sock ritual, not just maintenance. A performance, a shared understanding between noble and valet that the hose is not merely clothing, it is presentation, and presentation in your world is currency. Sometimes at court, servants compete to perfect these rituals. There are whispers of one young valet who starches his master's garters with rose water and honey, giving them a scent that drifts into the air with every step. Another reportedly threads a single silver hair into the seam of the left stocking, claiming it brings favor with widows. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or limited to the eccentric few, but one thing is certain: the more extravagant the hose, the more elaborate the ritual. And you are not known for subtlety. You rise. Hugh has set the next layers of clothing nearby, slashed breeches in black velvet, a doublet with silver buttons, and a collar of lace so stiff it stands like a halo around your neck. But you don't reach for them yet. First, the inspection. You walk to the full-length mirror, an absurd thing carved from Italian walnut and inlaid with tiny panels of polished horn. The glass, wavy and imperfect, distorts the room slightly, but your stockings, they look divine. You adjust the fall of your breeches so just an inch more stocking shows. Not too much, just a suggestion, enough to intrigue, not shock. The line of the seam, straight as a ruler, runs down the back of your leg like a secret spine. You remember last season, at the spring banquet, when Lord Alston wore green hose so tight the court physician warned him they might cut off circulation. He wore them anyway. His valet reportedly fainted during the dressing. You chuckle at the thought, but you admire the dedication. Because in this world, a good sock is more than fashion. It's a signal flare. It tells the court you are awake. You are present. You have not yet faded into irrelevance. Your sister once told you, half in jest, that she chose her husband based on the fold of his stocking when he crossed his legs. You didn't laugh because you knew she wasn't joking. Even love has seams. You sit again. Hugh brings out the scented powder, not for your feet. That was done at dawn. This is for your calves. He dusts them lightly with a blend of lavender and ground myrrh. The scent is faint but purposeful. Should anyone, by accident or intrigue, lean too closely, they'll breathe in something rare, something costly. There are stories of nobles who layered perfumes into their hose until the very bees grew confused. One woman reportedly lost a poodle who kept following her leg. You wonder what people will say about your stockings when you're gone. Will they remember the blue, the silk, the silver embroidery, or just the way you lingered at windows so the light would catch your calves? You hope for all of it. Outside, bells ring, 1, 2, 3, signalling the hour before court assembly, time to finish dressing. But you move slowly, still not ready to cover them. The stockings feel too perfect. Hugh helps you into the breeches, wide at the hips, pinched at the waist, open enough to allow glimpses of the silk beneath. You sigh once as the view fades, but it's worth it. Because the game now shifts, from admiration to suggestion, from display to concealment. Now the stockings must be glimpsed, teased, whispered about. You step into your boots last, fine leather, cut low, polished until they reflect the fire. The tops reach your shin, but no further. Why? So the hose still shows, of course. You brush imaginary lint from your lap, and Hugh steps back. Dressing complete, but not finished, because the socks still speak. And the day has only just begun. Section 4. You don't just wear socks, you decorate them. Because if your calves are a canvas, and they most certainly are, then the garters, ribbons and tassels are the brushstrokes. Subtle, yes, but intentional. Calculated, the sort of detail that separates a gentleman from a courtier, a knight from a nobleman, a background blur from a painting's focal point. This morning the garters are cream velvet. Tomorrow they might be crimson or midnight blue or saffron, if you're feeling risky and your tailor is in a good mood. But today they're cream, tied just below the knee with long curling ends that dangle over the sides of your stockings like theatrical sighs. The knot matters. The way it sits, the way it falls, the way it behaves when you cross your legs, all of it speaks. A twisted loop might signal carelessness. A sharp diagonal fold might hint at military precision. A soft droop, casual sensuality. You chose soft diagonal today. Elegance but alert. Thoughtful, not fussy. And tassels? You've never said it aloud, but you secretly love the tassels. There's a pair, dyed pale gold like candlelight, hanging from the back seam of your left garter, hand-braided. You had them made by a weaver who normally works on altar cloths. Each movement you make swings them gently. They don't shout, they shimmer. Tudor socks didn't always feature such flourishes. Early in the century, stockings were simpler, straight, worn under longer robes. But as hemlines rose and doublets shortened, legs came into view, and with them, the desire to ornament. Historians still argue whether the rise of sock accessories was inspired by French court fashions or simply born from the natural human desire to show off when given an inch of exposed ankle. Either way, by mid-century, embellishment was everywhere. Some garters had phrases stitched into them, tiny Latin maxims like sic transit gloria mundi or virtus in calce. Courage in the calf, indeed. Others were scented, sprigs of rosemary tucked into the folds, a subtle sign of mourning or passion, depending on the wearer. You recall one noble, Lady Ferndale, who famously wore mourning hose with black ribbon garters after the death of her cat. Not a nobleman, not a husband, a cat. She attended court for 3 days and refused to sit, just to make sure everyone saw. You were impressed and slightly unnerved. Because the power of sock accessories wasn't just aesthetic, it was narrative. You rise from your chair again and pace the hall, breeches rolled just high enough that the garters are visible. Passing footmen nod, eyes flickering downward. They pretend not to stare, but you know they do. It's part of the dance. You step onto the gallery balcony. Below, the main hall is stirring, fireplaces lit, rushes scattered, hounds barking lazily in the corners. Servants ferrying trays, courtiers adjusting their collars in reflection. You lean over the balustrade. Not far, just enough that someone might glance up and catch the fall of your garter ribbon. Accidental, of course. You wait, and then it happens. Lady Audley. Across the hall, she glances up, sees you. Sees the garter, her gaze lingers, 1 heartbeat. 2, then she lowers her eyes and continues, success. It's not flirtation, not exactly, it's awareness. Mutual understanding that presentation is power, that sock accessories are like subtext, understood only by those fluent in the language. Back inside, you sit at the long bench near the music chamber. Someone's tuning a viol, the notes bend like candle smoke. You cross your legs slowly, revealing the full arch of stocking, garter, and that golden tassel in one languid movement. The man beside you coughs, you smile. Earlier this week, a friend told you of a German noble who wore pewter bells on the back of his garters, tiny ones the size of peas. When he walked, they jingled ever so faintly, not enough to be called ridiculous, just enough to be remembered. You considered copying the idea, but thought better of it. Besides, tassels speak louder without sound. You watch the daylight shift across the floor, shadows lengthen, the fire burns lower. And still you sit, not because you're tired, because you're being seen. Sock accessories weren't just decorative, they were social cues, status indicators, conversation starters, and in rare cases, declarations. Once, at a midsummer masque, you tied a green ribbon to your left garter. No one knew what it meant except one person. They knew. That was enough. It came off by morning. You keep the ribbon in a drawer, pressed flat between 2 pages of a prayer book you've never read. Not everything needs words. Back in your chamber, your valet checks your boots for dust, straightens your coat, brings out a brush and gently flicks a speck of ash from your right garter. The cream velvet is still smooth, still perfect. He doesn't speak, neither do you. But in the mirror, you see yourself again. Blue hose, silver seam, cream garters. Gold tassel, it's not just an outfit, it's a statement. And today it says everything you need without ever moving your lips. Section 5, you spend an hour, maybe 2, just staring at your legs. This is not vanity, this is craft. You sit on the edge of the velvet cushioned window bench in your chamber, one leg stretched forward, the other bent slightly, heel resting on the rush-covered floor. The light from the mullioned windows slants across the polished wood like a blessing. It catches your stockings at just the right angle, lighting up the silk so it glows like watered satin, shifting blue to silver and back again. You watch the drape of your stockings the way a knight might study the edge of his blade. With intensity, with purpose, with a quiet sort of pride. This is what it means to dress with intention in the Tudor court. You adjust your garter, just slightly, so the ribbon rests diagonally. Then you reposition your calf, flex it, let the muscle rise subtly beneath the stocking's curve. You admire the shape, the clean seam, the way the hose hugs your ankle with just enough give to suggest that someone with excellent taste selected the silk. You're not posing, you're refining. The mirror before you, imported from Venice, framed in carved walnut and inlaid with a border of twisted bronze vine, doesn't offer clarity. Not the way modern glass does, but it offers elegance, slight warping that flatters the silhouette. You've learned to trust the mirror's opinion. There's a narrow bench beside it, where your valet places a folded linen cloth, just in case your foot should rest too long and gather ash. Beside that, a small bowl of lavender water. You'll use it later to cool your calves when you finally rise. The bowl reflects the light too. You take note of that. Details matter. A courtier walks by your open chamber door, slows, doesn't speak. You don't look up, but you know they noticed. Because sock admiration isn't done in private, not fully, it's done in calculated visibility. You don't stare into a mirror for hours because you're uncertain. You do it because your reflection is the prologue to your day. And today's chapter starts at the ankles. You shift again. Turn your foot outward. The tassel on your left garter dangles. Perfect. You roll the top edge of your breeches just a touch, enough to show another inch of stocking. A scandalous inch, some might say. You smile faintly. Let them whisper. This is the art of legwork. You remember the tale of Sir Gerard of Basingstoke, who once wore hose of such brilliant canary yellow that Queen Elizabeth herself blinked twice and dropped a grape from her fingers. He was later banished to Devon for unrelated reasons, but the stockings lived on in court memory for years. Ballads were sung, possibly sarcastic ones, but sung nonetheless. Historians still argue whether Sir Gerard's fashion was satire or sincere, whether he meant to dazzle or defy. But his name is remembered, and his calves immortalized in embroidery. Somewhere in the Queen's private chamber, a tapestry depicts him mid-bow, hose shining like polished butter. You don't go that far, but you've thought about it. Your valet enters. No words exchanged. He lays a fresh sash on the edge of your chair, a soft grey, a whisper of colour to go with the cream garters. He knows you've already made your decision. He places a pair of gloves nearby, then steps back, still admiring. Always, you switch legs, adjust the mirror slightly. Rebalance your weight. In court life, hours are long and mostly wasted. You might as well waste them well. Some days you test symmetry, other days you experiment how the hose looks in firelight versus sunlight, how different stools affect posture, how far you can extend your leg without losing dignity. Today, you simply enjoy. Your feet rest on the padded stool, specially crafted for this purpose. You once saw a similar one in the home of a merchant in Antwerp, imported it the next week. Had it covered in lamb's wool and dyed to match your third favourite pair of hose. The lamp on the corner table flickers. You lean slightly, flex your ankle, tilt your head. Yes, this moment is complete, not extravagant, not showy, just perfect. Outside, church bells ring. A thin clatter of hooves passes on the cobbled street below. You hear laughter, young voices, likely pages, perhaps mocking something, or someone. Not you, not today. You glance once more into the mirror. Lift your knee slightly, adjusting the way the fabric bunches, smoothing it with 2 fingers, admiring the discipline of the weave. You once tried to learn the craft, how to knit, failed miserably, dropped stitches, tangled skeins, nearly put a hole through a lady's hoop skirt by accident, but you respect the artisans more for it. Each stocking is an act of patience. Each seam a signature. You move to the second mirror, this one angled differently, slightly higher, allowing you to view the calf from above. You adjust the tassel, rotate your foot, raise your heel and settle it again. The angle is good. You make a note to have the valet reposition this mirror's stand an inch to the left. The light could catch more gold from the threadwork. Later today you'll walk into the court gallery, pause mid-step near the third window where the midday sun hits hardest. You'll look to your right as though in thought, allowing your left leg to take prominence. You'll shift your weight. And anyone will notice. They always do, because you took the time to sit here for an hour, maybe 2, and admire your socks. Like a true Tudor noble. Section 6. You lower yourself onto the cushioned stool near the hearth, socks carefully smoothed, legs extended just enough to avoid the ash that always manages to escape the fire grate. It's warm here, the kind of steady, low heat that silk loves. That your calves love. It's also the perfect place to savour your next favourite detail, embroidery, not on your cloak. Not your handkerchief, not even your collar, on your socks. You bend forward now, not quickly, not carelessly, but with the kind of practiced grace that allows a noble to inspect their own ankles without appearing like a common contortionist. The stockings shine faintly, still catching slivers of light even in the dim glow of the fire, but now you're looking closer. Into the thread itself. Near the cuff, just above the garter's velvet band, is your personal crest. Not the full coat of arms, too clumsy for something so elegant, but a symbol, a silver crescent moon stitched with 6 pointed stars barely larger than a fingernail. You had it added last winter. It took the embroiderer 3 attempts and a bloodied needle to finish the pattern cleanly in silk that thin. Beneath the crest, hidden in darker thread, are 4 initials. Not yours. You don't look at them long. Embroidery on Tudor socks was more than flourish. It was secret, intimate, and often coded. Some stitched prayers into the seams, others poems. There's record of one courtier who wore a verse from Ovid across both calves. The lines split cleanly between the legs, only legible when standing with feet apart and ankles turned slightly outward. He claimed it was about balance. He also claimed it won him 2 marriages and 3 duels. You lean back now and adjust your foot on the stool. The embroidery catches again, just a flicker, and then comes the scent. Yes, your socks are perfumed. Not heavily, not enough to overwhelm, just a faint, deliberate trace of orange blossom and rosemary. The herbs were dried and powdered, then rolled into the inside seam when the hose was still fresh from the tailor. You refresh it every few days. Your valet keeps the mix in a small clay jar with a lid shaped like a bee. Scented stockings are still a matter of debate among the court. Some nobles claim it's excessive. Others, especially younger ones, see it as the height of personal refinement. Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly favoured lavender oil linen beneath her hose. There's even a tale of her gifting a courtier a single rose-scented stocking in a private gesture of favour. Historians still argue whether the story is true. No documentation, just a letter, and a surviving stocking that smells faintly of petals. You reach down and pinch the fabric of your left stocking between 2 fingers. Lift it gently. It flexes and settles back. The scent rises faintly. It's subtle, gentle, clean. You imagine someone catching that trace as they pass, turning their head slightly, wondering what it was, where it came from. Wondering if it was you. Of course, you'll never confirm it. That's the trick. A good stocking speaks in whispers. You remember a mask from 2 winters ago, your legs wrapped in stockings of soft green with silver thread leaves running like vines from ankle to knee. You wore them beneath a gown of black velvet. No one mentioned the stockings aloud, but you caught the glances, saw how Lady Morton leaned a little closer when you passed, how Lord Belmore tripped slightly on the last step of the dance. All accidents, perhaps, but all noticed. Embroidery, scent, the fall of the cuff. These are tools. Quiet ones, the kind that shape perception without demanding it. You shift your legs again now, placing one ankle atop the other, letting the crest and the garter ribbon cross. This angle is less deliberate, more natural, something to be glimpsed in casual conversation. Your daughter once asked why you take such care with things no one else might see. You told her it was because you see them. And that's enough. She didn't fully understand, but she will. You glance toward your writing table, where a single stocking lies in a wooden frame, not for wearing, not anymore. The silk is too old, the embroidery nearly faded, but it belonged to your father. He wore it to court in 1538, the year he was named to the Privy Council. The record says nothing about his stockings, but the family stories do. Perfect calf, your aunt once said, sipping wine. Seam like a river, the king noticed, probably the only thing he noticed. The stocking is a reminder. That history has its details, and sometimes those details are made of thread. You rise from the stool and cross the room. The stocking in the frame doesn't shine, but it still speaks. You listen for a moment, then turn back. You've got guests coming soon, friends, rivals. People who know what to look for. You pull open your cabinet and run a hand across the stacks of folded stockings, each pair rolled with linen, each scented slightly differently. There's the plum silk from Lyon, the amber gold hose from Antwerp, the deep green with black chevron stitching, rare and dangerous if paired with the wrong coat. But today, you're content with blue and silver. You close the cabinet, walk to the door, your valet appears with your cloak. You step into it, but even cloaked, the socks remain visible, just an inch. Enough, always enough, because you know that what's whispered lasts longer than what's shouted. And a well-dressed ankle, that's the quietest whisper of all. Section 7. You think about laws now. Not the laws of Parliament, though, yes, technically those matter. Not even the Queen's proclamations, which carry weight enough to make a man blink twice before wearing green in April. No, today you are thinking of the more delicate laws. The quiet ones, the ones sewn into the very fabric of fashion, sumptuary laws. Laws that say who can wear what, and when, and why. You rise from the chair slowly, one stockinged foot landing soft on the rush mat, the other still raised, suspended in a moment of balance that could be mistaken for a dance step. The mirror behind you reflects your outline, blue hose, cream garters, golden tassels, the subtle shimmer of silver embroidery hugging the curve of your calf. It's beautiful. And technically, possibly, forbidden, at least to most, but you are not most. In Tudor England, clothing is regulated by more than taste or coin. It is governed, legislated, enforced, in theory, by people with badges and quills who might at any moment point to your sock and say, "Not for you, sir." Silk imported from Italy, reserved for lords and above, embroidery featuring precious metals. Questionable unless you hold land or influence, or have a cousin who knows someone on the Privy Council. Certain dyes, indigo, saffron, cochineal red, so costly they may only be worn by nobles of the right tier, or higher. Even the length of your hose, the width of your garter ribbon, the depth of your heel cut, all dictated, at least nominally, by royal decree. You walk slowly across your chamber, each step accompanied by the faint whisper of silk brushing silk. Your valet follows at a respectful distance, a folded parchment in his hand, your latest clothing license. A document listing what you may wear and when. He hands it to you without a word. You read it again. The line about hose is brief, silk permitted in single tones to the knee or above of modest decoration. You smile. Modest is such a flexible word. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws were truly enforced or merely aspirational. Some claim courtiers were fined regularly for stocking excesses. Too many buttons, too much lace, a hem a finger too high. Others suggest these laws were tools of intimidation, waved only when someone needed humbling. You fold the parchment and slide it back into your desk drawer under a bundle of scented wax seals. There's a mark on your license, a faint smudge where someone's thumb pressed too hard. You suspect the officer who approved it did so with eyes half closed and pockets half full. That's how the best stockings are worn. Not by right, by permission. You step out into the corridor, boots soft on the stone. The hall is quiet. A young man, apprentice to a visiting baron, pauses to bow. You catch him glancing downward quickly, as if unsure whether he's allowed to notice your calves. He is, but just barely. You continue on. Down the stair, past the heavy tapestries of Tudor roses and griffins and saints who never wore socks at all, past the bust of King Henry whose own calves were so admired that painters sometimes exaggerated them, giving him legs like pillars draped in hose as taut as royal intention. At the end of the corridor is a small chamber used by the steward. He stands as you enter. There's a box on the table, wide and shallow. Inside, a scroll of new regulations. He offers it to you. You take it with a nod and unroll it. Page 4. Addendum on the display of hosiery in mixed company. Your eyes narrow. The Queen has apparently issued new guidelines regarding undue attention paid to the limbs of male courtiers during evening entertainments. Something about distraction, something about preserving focus. You read between the lines. Someone's ankles caused a stir. You lean back in the chair, letting the scroll curl in your lap. You remember the recent solstice banquet. A young duke wore hose striped in gold and plum, legs crossed high, one stocking slightly lower than the other, a calculated imperfection. It worked. The whispers were still echoing in the West Wing the next morning, and now, laws. Of course, you tap the scroll lightly, fold it, hand it back. The steward says nothing, but his expression says everything. Everyone knows this isn't about morality. It's about power, because clothing in court is politics stitched in thread. Hose are not just garments. They are statements, arguments, challenges. A stocking too bold can elevate or erase you, depending on the hour and who's watching. You stand and adjust your breeches slightly, letting the hose below breathe again. The garter ribbon falls into place. The gold tassel swings once. You leave the room. In the courtyard, the breeze lifts the hem of your cloak just enough for the blue silk beneath to shimmer again in the sun. Two ladies in waiting glance over. One smiles. You keep walking. Let them write more laws. Let them ink more scrolls. As long as the silk sings when you move, you will remain just within the limits of acceptability and just beyond the reach of irrelevance. Because the secret of the Tudor sock is this: you can always wear it louder than the law allows, as long as you smile softly and walk slowly. And never ever explain. Section 8. You smell trouble before you see it. Not actual trouble, not the sword-clanking, church-condemning, whipped-in-public kind. No, this is the soft kind, the kind that wafts in on the breeze through the west doors of the palace. It smells of orange peel and clove, polished walnut and faint anxiety. It smells like imported socks, specifically Spanish silk stockings, and you know exactly who brought them. Don Juan de Valera, Spanish envoy, charming. The kind of man who never removes his gloves unless asked, who speaks like he's always half laughing at a joke no one else has heard. His English is too perfect, which makes everyone suspicious. And worst of all, his socks are magnificent. You first see them in the Great Gallery. There's a small crowd, as there always is when Don Juan enters a room. The lords admire him, the ladies admire him more. He stands near the window, one leg casually propped on the low stone sill, boot removed, yes, removed, and the stocking on full display. It's crimson silk, almost liquid in texture, with a golden flame stitched up the side in such detail you'd think it might burn if the sunlight hit it too hard. You approach slowly. He sees you. Smiles. "Ah, my lord," he says, tapping the heel of his stockinged foot. "Do they compare to yours?" You don't answer immediately. Instead, you offer a slow look down, then up, then say, "They shine, sir." But silk often does when it's new. A few nearby nobles chuckle, not loudly, just enough. Don Juan's eyes sparkle. "Ah, but do yours breathe like the wind? Mine were woven by monks on a hillside in Toledo." Their silence was sewn into the thread. You lift your left leg slightly, barely a shift, just enough for your own stocking to catch the firelight. Silver glimmers. The embroidery along your calf winks once. "My silence," you reply, "comes from knowing I don't need to explain." The air crackles just for a moment. Fashion duels in the Tudor court were rarely won with fabric alone. Timing, tone, and the angle of your foot mattered just as much. You hold his gaze a second longer, then walk past. Behind you, someone coughs. Someone else whispers. You don't look back. Imported stockings, especially Spanish ones, are both coveted and controversial. Spanish silk is softer than English, more luminous, finer to the touch. But it comes with baggage. To wear it says you trust foreign craft more than your own. To flaunt it says you're arrogant enough to admit it. Historians still debate whether Spanish silk was restricted by law or merely discouraged through snide remarks and bureaucratic delay. Letters from courtiers suggest both happened. There's record of one lord whose entire shipment of silk hose was accidentally misrouted to Portsmouth. The socks vanished. He blamed the French. Everyone blamed fashion. You return to your chamber and call for your valet. "Bring the Italian pair," you say. He pauses. "The seafoam green?" You nod. They've never been worn outside your room, but today feels right. 10 minutes later, you're standing before the mirror again, 1 foot forward, hose clinging perfectly, the colour pale and strange, like the underside of a leaf or the moment the sky turns just before dawn. You fasten a dark grey garter beneath the knee, no tassel. Not this time. The message should be clear, not coy. You descend to the east courtyard where the Spanish envoy now strolls with a group of ladies. He sees you, notices, the smile twitches again. But he says nothing. You bow slightly as you pass, not to him. To the wind, it lifts your cloak for one breathless second, reveals the soft green beneath. No one gasps. But several pause. That's enough, because imported sock drama doesn't need loudness. It needs placement, precision, a raised eyebrow in just the right moment. A stocking seen not all at once, but in pieces, ankle here, seam there, a flicker of embroidery, and the whisper of imported thread. And perhaps the most powerful sock of all is the one not worn at all. You remember Lady Katharina's trick. She once attended court in a gown that trailed so long no one could see her legs. For days, people speculated what she wore underneath. When asked, she only said something with teeth. You never found out what it meant. But you still think about it. At dinner, Don Juan sits across from you. Beneath the table, the candlelight flickers. You shift slightly, so does he. Neither of you speaks of socks. But they're both there, breathing, alive. 2 nobles, 2 nations, and 24 inches of imported silk woven tighter than most alliances. You eat slowly, cleanly, you do not drop a single crumb on your hose. 'Cause tonight everything is theatre, and your socks, they're centre stage. Section 9. You hear the story before you see the man. It travels like a draught through the stone corridors, low murmurs by the servants, whispered awe in the buttery, and more than one chortle from the guards near the north gate. His calves, someone mutters. Like marble columns. You know who they mean. Henry, King Henry VIII. He's not here, not yet, but his presence arrives early, like the scent of a roast before the platter enters the room, and as always, so do the legends. His temper, his feasts, his wives. But most of all, his socks, because while the monarch rules with decree and sword, he also rules with calves, and those calves are glorious. You stand at the edge of the great gallery, adjusting your sleeve cuffs, pretending not to listen as two ladies pass behind you. They say he has them massaged daily. With rose oil. No, with whipped cream and song. You smile, but only slightly. The truth is less whimsical but no less extraordinary. King Henry was obsessed with presentation. Every portrait, every mask, every public appearance choreographed to ensure his legs took the spotlight. His hose were custom fitted by the royal tailor. Each pair hand-dyed, often in bold tones, deep crimson, ultramarine, even buttery gold. And the cut. High, exceptionally so, to display the calf in full relief. It's said he once rejected a portrait because the artist failed to capture the exact curve of his gastrocnemius. The man was paid nonetheless, but the painting burned. You descend the gallery steps slowly as the crowd gathers for his arrival. Everyone is watching the door. But you glance sideways at ankles, stockings, garters drawn tight, seams pressed flat. Everyone has stepped up their game today, and still none will outshine him. The herald steps forward, trumpet raised. His Majesty the King. The doors open, and there he is, broad-chested, cloaked in black and crimson, beard curled to a point, and yes, calves gleaming. His stockings today are pearlescent white, a shade few dare to wear, bordered in soft grey silk, with gold thread embroidery that climbs from the ankle to mid-thigh in the shape of a roaring lion. You inhale. It's impressive. You bow, of course, everyone does. He passes, walking deliberately. Slowly, one boot off, carried by a page for the effect, the stocking exposed in its full glory. His leg extends with each step like a proclamation, and every gaze drops to the calf, because while the crown rests on his head, the kingdom gathers around his shin. You take your seat near the rear of the gallery, angle your own foot carefully. Your stockings are impeccable, sea foam green with silver cuffs today, the fabric pulled smooth as paper, but beside the king, you are background colour. Still, you watch him closely, and more than his calves, you study the way people react to them. The way nobles lean forward when he sits, the subtle glances, the careful posture adjustments of nearby courtiers trying not to appear slouched or legless. He knows, of course, that's why he crossed his legs so deliberately when he took the throne chair. That's why his hose are cut a fraction tighter today. This is not fashion, it's theatre. Royal ankles are not merely admired. They are discussed, written about, painted, whispered over during banquets and scribbled into letters to cousins in Kent. And the thing is, he works for them. Henry trains. Rides, hunts, feasts, yes, but not without calculation. His calves are not gifts, they are built, maintained, admired. You once overheard his valet explaining the routine. 2 walks per day, 3 flights of stairs minimum, no less than a dozen calf stretches before breakfast. Sock dedication. There's a tale, perhaps fringe, perhaps not, that King Henry once challenged the French ambassador to a sock-off, a friendly contest during which both men displayed their finest hose to the court for judging. The Frenchman brought scarlet silk, Henry wore cream, plain, no embroidery. But the calf, unmatched. Historians still argue whether the contest occurred. Some say it was symbolic, a moment of masculine display turned political theatre. Others say it ended in laughter and a toast. But the calf portrait remains. A miniature, just a leg, painted in watercolour, framed in gold, kept in the Queen's private chamber for years. You rise once the court begins to disperse. The king exits. His hose vanish behind the curtain, but the memory lingers. Outside, the sun is low. You walk slowly toward the east garden, passing nobles who no longer care to conceal their glances. Several nod at your own stockings. One whispers, "Bold choice, my lord." You nod in return, because yes, bold. But in the kingdom of calves, ruled by Henry himself, even the bold must bow. Still, you wonder, not if you'll surpass him, but when. You picture the court 10 years from now. The throne newly occupied, your calves slightly older, your hose slightly finer. and someone, anyone, whispering your name, not in fear, but in admiration. Section 10. You've spent the better part of the morning preparing, adjusting the line of your hose, dusting the fold of your breeches, testing 3 pairs of garters before selecting the ones with the tiny silver bells, inaudible to most, but just enough to sing a note or two when you cross your legs deliberately on polished oak. But now it's time. Not for court, not for sermon, not even for supper. It's time to unroll your socks. Yes, the unroll, the most intimate, most sacred moment of your day. More revealing than your prayers, more sensual than your sash, more meaningful than 100 whispered flatteries by candlelight. You sit on the low stool by the window, firelight on your back, your feet bare, resting on warm brick. The hose are fresh, washed, pressed, scented faintly with mint. They lie before you on the bench, carefully folded in thirds, embroidered cuffs peeking from the linen wrap like delicate secrets. You reach for the right one. Slowly, this isn't something to rush. The unrolling of a Tudor stocking isn't like slipping into a boot. It's a ritual, a process, a lesson in control. You start at the cuff, hold it up with both hands. It's long, longer than your forearm. You let the fabric fall once, twice, until it unfurls like a silken banner. The sound is barely audible, just a soft sigh of fabric. Then you begin. You roll from the top, downward, tight but not strained, letting the stocking form a soft wheel in your palm. The silk winds easily, each rotation smoothing the slight creases of the previous fold. By the time you reach the toe, the roll sits in your hand like a pastry, neat, delicate, full of promise. You position it over your foot and slowly begin to unroll it upward. The stocking tightens as it rises. Past your heel, over the arch, clinging now, waking with warmth. You pause at the ankle, flex once, then continue upward, calf, shin, knee. Unrolling the stocking onto your leg is like painting a line of status across your skin, a visible ladder of care. Every inch pulled smooth is another silent declaration. I have the means. I have the patience, I have the taste. You reach the thigh. Secure it gently with your garter, a muted grey velvet today, threaded through with a single strand of pale blue. A subtle nod to the seafoam hose you wore earlier this week, then the second stocking. You repeat the ritual, unrolling slowly, smoothing, adjusting, making sure the seam at the back aligns perfectly with the centre of your calf. Historians still argue whether this seam was decorative or functional, but those who wore them know the truth. It's both. A seam that wobbles suggests laziness. A seam that runs straight as a sword speaks volumes. There's pride in that line. You flex both legs now. Look down. The stockings gleam. They shine like polished pewter in the morning light, the kind of soft luster that silk wears after being handled carefully, never stretched, never scrubbed, never mistreated. You rise, step to the mirror, your hose fall just right today, clinging at the ankle, tapering upward, not too tight. Not too loose. You move one leg forward, shift your weight. Yes, perfect. You remember a letter, written by a noblewoman to her cousin, that described watching a gentleman adjust his stockings during a lecture on divine order. She said the moment felt more spiritual than the sermon. There's a truth to that. The quiet act of sock unrolling holds a kind of intimacy that's hard to match. No words, no audience, just your own hands, your own skin, the silk between them. Fringe tales say that some nobles had assistants trained solely in the art of rolling and unrolling hose, that their entire job was to ensure a perfect fit every time. One particularly absurd account claims the Duke of Wendell hired a small troupe of actors to perform dramatic readings while he unrolled his socks each morning. Something about inspiring a proper emotional state. You've never gone that far. But the idea lingers, because truly, who else do you dress for if not yourself? You sit again. Let your legs stretch out before you, the stockings gleam, the seams run true. You adjust your garters once more, tighten, retie, smooth the ribbon. The bells do not chime, not yet. They wait. You run your palm down the stockinged leg one final time, just to be sure. The world can fall apart later. There may be taxes, a sermon, a broken wine goblet, but right now this moment belongs to silk, to seams, to the slow unfurling of something beautiful, because in a world ruled by kings, where battles are fought with gold and glances, where your worth is often measured in whispers and wine, the one thing you control completely is how you wear your socks and how you unroll them. Section 11. Cold floors demand warm hosiery. It's that simple. And this morning, when the fire has gone out, when the stone beneath your feet feels like it was pulled from a frozen well, when the chambermaid's breath clouds in the hallway air, you understand just how essential a fine pair of stockings can be. You haven't stepped outside yet. You don't need to. You can feel winter's teeth nipping at the edges of the manor, but your legs, protected. They are wrapped in wool silk blend hose, thicker than your usual pair, dyed a rich walnut brown with a soft nap that brushes against your skin like a cat's cheek. No embroidery. No tassels, no silver thread, just warmth. Function, yes, but still fashion, because in the Tudor court, luxury and survival often wore the same face. You cross the chamber carefully. The flagstones are slick with condensation, the morning light dull behind the frost-covered windows. You pull your cloak tighter, but your legs remain the warmest part of you. And you thank yourself for once again choosing quality over flamboyance. Your valet enters holding a pair of boots. He says nothing, but his eyes flick to your stockings. Approvingly. "These will do," he murmurs. You nod. He kneels, slides the boots over your feet, careful not to tug or stretch the fabric. It's a quiet act. Respectful, both of you understand what's at stake. You head to the chapel. It's colder there. The stone arches drip from the ceiling. The rushes on the floor are damp. The wooden pews are slick with chill, and still your legs remain warm. You settle in your seat, pull your cloak across your shoulders, and glance down. The hose remains smooth, not a wrinkle, not a sag. The garters hold firm. You allow yourself a small smile, because warmth is rare, but earned. There's a tale of a courtier, some say Lord Pennymount, others swear it was Sir Dallington, who once braved a 3-day hunt in hose so thin he caught a chill that never quite left his bones. He died 10 years later. Of what? Lingering damp. That's how the coroner wrote it. Historians still argue whether the real cause was pneumonia or political exile. But the moral remains, never choose fashion over function, not in February. Still, cold doesn't mean dull. You remember last winter when the Queen herself remarked on the subtle weave of your winter stockings. "They speak," she said, without shouting. A compliment, if ever there was one. You shift slightly in your seat, adjust the fall of your cloak to better showcase the turn of your calf. Just a hint, enough, because even in cold beauty counts. There's a practical joy in knowing your legs are protected, that beneath the brocade and velvet and ceremonial stiffness you are comfortable, and more than that, confident. You rise from the pew, the stockings stretch, then settle. No sagging, no bunching, just the warmth of wool, the gentleness of silk, and the slight scratch of truth. You are not merely surviving winter. You are dressing through it. Back in your chamber, your daughter waits near the hearth. She's wrapped in a blanket, fingers peeking out like twigs. Her cheeks are red, nose running. "Still cold?" you ask. She nods. You sit beside her and remove one glove. Then, after a pause, you pull down your right stocking just enough to reveal the inner lining. She touches it, eyes wide. "It's soft," she whispers. You nod. And warm. You remove a second pair from your trunk, smaller, plainer, but well made. "Try these." She does. And she smiles, her toes curl inside them. The fire crackles softly. And for a moment, your family's history, your wealth, your title, your name, rests not in a scroll, nor a coat of arms, but in a pair of stockings, passed down. Shared, worn, there's a comfort in knowing you've wrapped your legacy in something real. Something useful, something soft. Later that night, you sit again by the fire. The snow outside whispers against the shutters. Your boots rest beside the hearth, steaming gently, but your hose, still on, still smooth, still warm. The cold may knock at the door, but your legs do not flinch, because in this, at least, you are prepared. Section 12. You've never thought of socks as romantic. Not really, but here, under the glow of 30 dripping candles, while the music lilts gently through the West Hall and laughter bubbles up from behind velvet fans, you realize you've underestimated the seductive power of hosiery. You're not alone. Across the room, a young noblewoman dances, her skirt swaying just enough to reveal a glimpse of rose-coloured stocking beneath. Just once. Just enough, a flicker of silk, a hint of calf, it steals the breath from 3 men at once. And you catch her eye as she spins, the corner of her mouth curling in a way that says, "Yes, I meant for you to see it." In Tudor courtship, glances are letters, touches are oaths, and socks, yes, socks are signals. You recall the old rhyme, "A ribbon tied upon the knee may mean she longs to dance with thee, but if her garter's colour blue, she dreams of something more with you." You once scoffed at it, now you understand. Because tonight you are wearing socks you didn't select. They were a gift, folded in pressed linen, hand-delivered by a page with no return name. The embroidery along the top band, a lavender sprig. You recognize it, her emblem. You don't know what it means yet. But you're wearing them, and she'll know, because sock gifts are the court's most secret love letters. Impossible to fake, difficult to deny. Unlike a ring or locket, a pair of hose must be worn to be believed, and wearing them is a promise. You remember a scandal from last summer. A lord received a pair of crimson hose from a lady not his wife. He wore them to a midsummer masque. Everyone noticed. By the next day his wife had left the manor. The hose were found, washed and folded, on the chapel steps, with a single tear embroidered into the cuff. Historians still debate whether the act was one of shame or triumph. You sip your wine and glance down. The lavender thread catches the candlelight. You smile. You don't need to know what comes next. This is enough, at least for now. Later that evening, the crowd thins. A lute plays softly in the alcove. You find yourself walking the edge of the gallery alone, cloak loose, firelight warming your legs through layers of cloth and silk and secret. Then a hand, soft on your arm, you turn. It's her, no words, just a glance downward. She sees, and you know, she knows you received her message. She brushes past. Gone again. But the warmth lingers. You sit on the stone bench, letting the heat from the nearby hearth settle into your stockinged legs. You look at them differently now, not just as garments, but as carriers of intention. Flirtation, memory, even hope. You remember a story from your childhood, 2 lovers who lived on opposite sides of a manor wall, never spoke, never touched. Only exchanged socks through a loose stone near the stables. By the time they were married, they had dozens of pairs, their love sewn into every seam. You never believed it. Now you think maybe it was true, because socks are intimate. They hold the shape of you. They remember the curve of your foot, the tension in your step, the warmth of your skin. And when someone gives you a pair, they're offering not just fabric, but space. A place for you to be remembered, to be held. You lean back now, letting the candlelight pool against your knees. The lavender thread glows faintly, the garters hold gently, you do not tug them loose. Not yet, because this story is still unfolding, and in the world of Tudor courtship, a sock is never just a sock. It is the beginning of something. Section 13, you didn't plan on revealing your socks tonight? Not really. But now you find yourself center floor, under the vaulted ceiling of the banquet hall, with music curling around your ankles and the laughter of half the court at your back. You've just executed a rather ambitious turn, too ambitious perhaps, and your breeches have lifted ever so slightly, and suddenly, there they are. Your socks, on full display. It wasn't part of the plan, but then again, no one here believes in accidents. Especially not when it comes to hosiery. You straighten slowly, smooth your coat, adjust your posture. You do not tug the breeches back down. Instead, you let the moment breathe. A quiet confidence, a flicker of silk catching the chandeliers above, and then the whispering begins. Sock theatre, a phrase that means nothing outside these walls and everything within them. You cross the floor with a calculated grace. Your calf flexes with each step. The embroidery on your hose, a thin trail of gold vine, winks in and out of sight. 2 ladies glance sideways. One covers her mouth. A gentleman nods, faintly impressed, because yes, you've made a statement. Your stockings aren't just beautiful, they're timed. The reveal, the lighting, the length of the dance, everything mattered. Tudor nobles lived for moments like this, the brief spectacle, the accidental leg. A hemline caught in the wind, a stocking exposed on the stair. It wasn't vulgar. It was thrilling, controlled, daring. And unlike the feathered sleeves or gem-encrusted shoes, hosiery was intimate, secretive. You only saw it if the wearer allowed it, or forgot purposefully. Historians still argue whether Queen Elizabeth herself ever indulged in such displays. Some say she wore crimson hose under her court gowns, others claim she never let a soul see them. But a painting, long forgotten, shows the faintest line at the ankle, barely visible beneath layers of velvet. You think of that now as you ascend the dais. The music fades. You bow, and once again your stockings catch the light. People remember not what you said, not what you wore above the knee, but the way your legs moved, the shape they held, and the shimmer beneath. Later, you retreat to the antechamber. The walls are quieter here, the fire low. A mirror waits in the corner as if ready to debrief you. You sit, lift your leg, examine the hose. No snags, no creases, just perfection. Sock theatre isn't about vanity, it's about awareness, mastery. You wear the moment as much as the garment. You let your stocking become part of the narrative, a symbol, a punctuation mark on a sentence you haven't spoken aloud. You recall the story of Lord Elverton. At a state dinner, his hose caught fire. A rogue candle, perhaps. He leapt up, extinguished it with wine, and turned the moment into laughter. Days later, he commissioned a new pair, with a stitched flame on each ankle. He wore them to every banquet thereafter. People loved him for it. You admire the stitchwork on your own pair now. The subtle gradient from pale gold at the heel to deeper bronze along the shin. They took 6 weeks to finish. You've worn them 3 times. Only tonight did they receive applause, unspoken but real. Your valet enters quietly, brings fresh stockings for the evening. You decline. These will stay. He nods. He understands. Because once a sock has become a story, it must be worn to its end. You adjust your garters, smooth your hands over the silk, and prepare to return to the hall. Where the candles burn lower, where the whispers still hang in the air, where someone, somewhere, will be watching, waiting for the next flicker, the next step, the next glimpse. Because in this court, a stocking well-timed is worth more than a speech, and a calf well-shown, a legacy. Section 14. You would think laundry day would bring humility, and yet here you are, standing in your undergarments near the south courtyard, watching 2 attendants hang your stockings with the care of a cathedral ceremony. Linen lines strung between posts, wooden pegs laid out like chess pieces, a copper tub steaming faintly in the early sun. Your legs are bare for now and cold, but your pride intact, because these stockings, 12 pairs, no fewer, are your second skin, and their care is an extension of your status. You do not toss them in a pile, you do not let them soak in any old basin, you have a system, a process, a ritual. The first step is chalk. Before washing, the soles are gently dusted to lift oils and unseen grit. Your laundress swears by it. She uses a goat hair brush and soft cloth, whispering to the fabric like it might respond. And maybe it does. These stockings have survived court, hunt, and garden stroll. They've witnessed flirtations, secret meetings, a dance under moonlight that nearly unraveled a marriage, and now they are baptized, lowered gently into warm water scented with vinegar, crushed rosemary, and 3 drops of rose oil. Never more. Any more, and the silk wilts. She told you that once, holding a ruined stocking like a limp flower. You remember the silence that followed. They soak for precisely 20 minutes, not a moment more. Then come the rinses, cool water only. The first wash removes dirt, the second scent, the third memory, perhaps. A court lady once said she refused to rinse more than twice. I like them to smell faintly of the night before. Historians still argue whether this affection for lingering scent was romantic or simply lazy. You believe it depends on the night. Once rinsed, the stockings are gently twisted, never wrung, and rolled in soft cloth to draw the water. Then they're hung by the toes. Not the cuffs. Hanging them upside down preserves the line, maintains the drape. Your launderer demonstrates this each week with the calm authority of a woman who controls the legs of half the court. You admire her, fear her slightly. She knows every snag, every pull, every wine stain you never confessed. Your stockings hang now in the light breeze, 12 soft banners of silk and wool in shades from storm grey to blush rose. The green pair trembles slightly, catching the light like seaweed beneath a wave. The blue ones, the ones you wore to last month's banquet, still carry the faintest outline of your calf. You wonder if someone else sees them and knows. The drying racks are beautiful in their way, a quiet gallery of past decisions, which pair matched which garter, which stocking bore the weight of which dance. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear them speak. A creak of cloth, a rustle of history. You sit on a bench nearby, cloaked against the wind. Your legs bare but not ashamed. There's intimacy in this exposure, a pause in the pageantry. A rare vulnerability. You glance toward the stone wall where your first valet once dropped a basin full of hose in a panic. A squirrel had entered the chamber and startled him. 2 pairs were ruined. The squirrel lived. The valet did not. Well, not in your service. There's a superstition, fringe of course, that if you sleep beside your hose while they dry, your fortunes will rise with the morning sun. One lord in Cornwall built a special rack beside his bed. Hung socks each night like prayers. He died broke, but very well dressed. You rise now, slowly. Approach the line, touch the blue pair, just briefly. The silk is cool, damp, obedient. Tomorrow they'll be warm again, and ready. For now you wait. You let the sun work, you trust the air, because even the finest stockings must surrender, once a week, to soap and wind. Even legacy needs laundering, and somewhere in that rinse, in that slow sway on the line, you remember something important. What we wear touches the world, and the world always touches back. Section 15. You wouldn't think socks could cause a crime wave, but you'd be wrong. There's a quiet scandal running through court these days. No blood, no bodies, just missing silk. It starts small. A pair vanishes from a laundry rack. A page boy is caught with hose not his own. A merchant swears a crate of Italian stockings disappeared en route to Dover. At first, no one pays attention. Who would suspect the humble sock? But then the Countess of Windermere loses her winter pair, charcoal grey with fox fur cuffs, priceless, worn once, never seen again. Then Lord Greville's red velvet garters turn up on a footman, worse, on both his legs. Suddenly people notice. Suddenly socks are missing everywhere. You tighten the lock on your wardrobe. Start counting each pair. You become a little paranoid, checking for snags, strange creases, unfamiliar scents. Your valet assures you everything is in order. But he also started sleeping with a knife beneath his cot, because this is more than mischief, it's sock theft. And it's spreading. There's rumour, always rumour, that a small gang of smugglers is moving stockings between London and Calais, hidden in false heels and hollow books. The trick is that a single pair of silk hose, especially if embroidered, is worth more than 3 silver goblets. More portable too. You remember the merchant who came to court last week with a tunic full of hidden pouches, claimed he was transporting figs. Someone sneezed near his sleeve, and 3 stockings fell out. He fled before they hit the ground. Historians still argue whether the Tudor sock trade was regulated by the Crown or merely tolerated out of fashion's necessity. There are no formal records of a sock tax, but letters between tailors suggest bribes, false permits, and even sock laundering, whereby used stockings were cleaned, restitched, and passed off as new. You once found a tiny mark, a tailor's cipher, stitched into the seam of a pair you bought from a visiting Spanish noble, not your initials. Not your crest. Someone else had worn them. The feeling was intimate and unsettling. You didn't wear them again, but you kept them in a locked drawer, just in case, because sock crime isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about identity. A noble's stocking is a fingerprint, a shape, a scent, a stretch of fabric that remembers the wearer long after the leg has gone, and to steal that is to borrow power. You recall the tale of Lady Beresford, who claimed her chambermaid wore her stockings during the night to feel more beautiful. The maid was dismissed, but Beresford later confessed that the stockings did seem to hang better after that. She hired the girl back at twice the pay. You take no chances. Your valet now sews a single red thread into the cuff of every pair, your signature, invisible to most, but there. You've also begun to store your finest hose in a carved chest with an iron lock. The key hangs from a chain around your neck. You once considered keeping them in the chapel, but even you know that's dramatic. Still, the fear is real. At court last week, a duel nearly broke out over a misidentified garter. It matched both men's stockings. Neither backed down. The Queen intervened. She ruled it belonged to neither. And kept it. You admired her for that. Tonight you sit near the hearth counting. 10 pairs, 2 pairs missing, but those were the travel hose. Not your best. Still, you make a note, because it starts like this. A pair here, a pair there, until suddenly you're barefoot in a palace where every stockinged calf might be wearing your story. You lean back in your chair, stretch your legs. The firelight kisses your silk, deep green, trimmed with a single line of black thread. Your favourites. You only wear them at home, where it's safe. Or is it? You shift your feet closer to the flame, let them warm. Let the shadows rise, because tonight you'll sleep lightly, and if you hear the soft brush of silk on the stair, you'll know the sock thieves are near, and they aren't after comfort, they're after you. Section 16. You've begun to think about your will, not in a morbid way, though in this palace death is never farther than the next bad oyster or ill-placed rumour, but in the practical, practiced way of a Tudor noble nearing the quiet slope of age. You've made decisions about your estates, your titles, even your dogs, but what about your socks? It's not a joke, not here, because you've spent a lifetime curating them. Stitch by stitch, season by season, you've collected them like others do rare books or foreign coins. Each pair tells a chapter, some whisper, some shout, some ache, and you wonder, who will inherit the story they carry? You sit in your solar, pen in hand, the parchment before you blank but for your name. The fire is steady, your feet are warm, today in dove-grey wool, embroidered at the ankle with a single white feather. You wore them the day you proposed. Your daughter enters quietly, as she often does, 17 now, her boots muddy, her cheeks pink from the wind. She doesn't yet wear stockings in your style. She claims they itch, she claims they're silly. But you catch her glancing at yours sometimes when she thinks you're not looking. Will you write me into the will, she asks. You smile. If I do, it'll be for something you'll never wear, she shrugs. Maybe, or maybe I'll wear them when no one's watching. A fair answer. Because that's how it starts. You recall the will of Lord Harvington. He left 12 pairs of stockings to 12 different people, each with a note. One read, "These caught the Queen's eye. Use them wisely." Another said, "These will make you forgiven." No one knows what he meant, but the recipients all wore their gifts the next day. There's also the tale, half fringe, half truth, of the noblewoman who passed on her entire sock chest to a maid who once saved her from tripping on the stairs. The maid became a fashion icon in 3 weeks, married a viscount in 4. Historians still argue whether it was the socks or the stride she gained from wearing them. You open your wardrobe now, inside, 24 pairs, each folded with care. Some sealed in linen, others wrapped in pressed rosemary. You take out a navy pair, faded now, the garters softened with use. Worn during your first council meeting, you made no speeches that day, but you stood tall. You run your hand across the fabric. It no longer gleams, but it still remembers. Will someone else feel that? You imagine your son pulling them on one morning, adjusting the seam, noticing how they hug the calf, feeling perhaps a little more himself, a little more you. You imagine your daughter wearing them secretly beneath her riding skirt, just for the comfort, just for the defiance. You don't need your name sewn into the band. The socks are legacy enough. You begin to write. To my daughter, should she wish them, my socks, all of them, worn or new, embroidered or plain. May she find her shape in them, as I found mine. You pause, then add, and if not, let her gift them to those who understand what it means to be both quiet and seen. You blot the ink, fold the parchment, set it aside. That evening you wear your red stockings, rich, heavy silk stitched with a single black thread that winds like a path from heel to thigh. You rarely wear them now, but tonight feels right. You sit by the fire, let your daughter braid your hair. Neither of you speaks. But later, when you remove your socks, she takes them, folds them, places them in the cedar box at the foot of your bed. And you know, without words, that she understands, not just the fabric, but the weight, the history, the comfort, and someday, perhaps, the gift. Section 17. You don't wear socks today, not because you've given up or grown forgetful or suddenly become one of those wild souls who lets their bare calves brush the world. No, you don't wear socks today because the day itself does not ask for them. It is quiet, overcast, the kind of soft grey morning where the bells don't ring quite on time and the fire in the great hearth takes 2 tries to catch. The sort of day where the court moves slowly, as if wrapped in wool. You remain in your chamber, windows open just an inch. You sit by the long oak table where your socks are usually laid out in rows, like a choir awaiting robes. Today they rest in their drawers, silent, folded, breathing faintly of cedar and lavender. You do not reach for them. Instead, you stretch your legs. Look at the skin you've covered all your life. It's older now. The calves are less firm, the ankles slower to rise, but the shape is yours. And the stories? Still there. You trace a finger along a pale scar just above the ankle. A riding accident, years ago. You remember how the stocking tore. How you patched it yourself, how you wore it again, and no one noticed the mend. That was a good day. Another mark near the shin, a burn, candle wax dropped during a long vigil in the Queen's chapel. The wax cooled instantly, but the scar lingered. You always wore thicker hose after that. You rise. Walk barefoot across the room. The stone floor is not as cold as you feared, or perhaps your feet have finally grown used to it. You reach the window and rest your hand on the frame. Outside, the courtyard is empty. The wind tugs gently at the banners. Today is not a court day. No dances, no duels. No declarations, just the slow shuffle of boots, the smell of rain and the hush of woolen coats. You sit by the window and think of your socks. Not as fashion, not even as armour, but as chapters. You remember the striped ones you wore to the solstice feast, now faded but still folded neatly, the black pair with red garters you wore when you argued your estate boundaries before the Privy Council, the seafoam silk from the year you turned 40, and everyone told you it was too bold, and yet you wore it anyway. Each pair holds a version of you, braver, sharper, warmer. You've never danced in the same stocking twice without noticing the difference. You look down at your bare legs now, they're still yours. You think of the letters, the glances, the laughter that happened around your ankles. The way people once leaned forward to see, the quiet, satisfied weight of a compliment not spoken, but earned. You wonder, have you said goodbye to your socks? No, they're not gone, just resting. They've earned it. So have you. You reach for the cedar box at the foot of your bed. Lift the lid. Inside, folded with reverence, are the oldest pair, cream wool. Softened with time, you place them gently across your lap, not to wear, just to remember, because in this world some things outlast their use and become meaning. Legacy stitched in thread, comfort passed from skin to air. You close your eyes for a moment. The wind quiets, your breath slows, and for the first time in a long while you sit with no audience. No show, no shine, just silence. Just yourself and your socks. And now, with your stockings folded, the fire fading low, and the court tucked quietly behind heavy walls of stone and oak, let yourself drift. You've walked the corridors, you've played the game, you've outshone rivals and worn stories stitched in silk, worn love in lavender thread, worn power in the lift of your calf and the hush of your garter. But the day ends, and your legs, no matter how fine the cloth that cloaked them, must rest. Breathe slowly now. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the stockings are off. The world can wait. The footsteps in the gallery fade. The scent of rosemary clings gently to the linens. The wind outside hushes its tune. The moon, somewhere beyond the roof beams, rises without ceremony. You feel its quiet tug on the night air. And your limbs, tired from elegance and history, feel heavier now, settled. Let them rest. Let your ankles be bare. Let your thoughts fold like the soft cloth tucked neatly into the cedar chest. You are not just the stories they tell about you. You are the one who wore them. And tomorrow perhaps you'll choose the crimson ones, but not tonight. Tonight you are still whole, warm, and entirely your own.